The rule. In the archives of the Galactic Concord, there was a phrase carved into crystal and etched into memory. It wasn't a law, nor a treaty, nor even a recorded decree from the High Council. It was something older, something passed in whispers and carried in the marrow of every sentient being who dared to walk the stars. Never test the humans. No one could say for certain where the rule began. Some claimed it was born of the first contact wars, when a minor raiding species had descended upon Earth expecting an easy conquest, only to vanish from history within a single planetary cycle. Others swore it stretched back further, to an age before the Concord had even formed, when human explorers stumbled upon alien civilizations with reckless courage and refused to yield to any who sought dominion over them. The humans themselves had never spoken of the rule. Most didn't even know it existed. It wasn't taught in their schools, nor written in their histories. To them, Earth's long climb to the stars had been slow, messy, and often fractured. They didn't know that beyond the veil of their solar system, entire species watched them with wary eyes. For centuries, humanity had been contained by unspoken consensus. Their expansion was allowed, yes, but always at the edges, never in the heart of the galactic trade routes. They were granted observer seats in councils, minor trade agreements, token respect. And behind every gesture, there lingered a nervous truth: if humans were truly tested, the galaxy might tremble. Among those who believed the legend least was archivist Talren of the Soluun Dominion. To him, the rule was nothing more than galactic superstition, the kind of myth weaker civilizations clung to in order to explain their failures. Humans. They were primitive upstarts. Their ships were patchwork compared to Soluun engineering, their weapons laughable against plasma arrays, their lifespan barely a blink in the eyes of the long-lived races. And yet, the rule persisted. Talren had devoted his career to studying the Concord's histories, and everywhere he turned, the threads pointed back to Earth. Unexplained victories. Records sealed by council decree. Entire fleets that vanished without explanation the moment they turned their attention toward human space. It gnawed at him. His people prided themselves on dominance, on order, on being the architects of galactic civilization. How could the Dominion bow to a phantom? In the Dominion's halls of power, others had begun to ask the same question. The Soluun were a proud species, and pride had a way of fermenting into arrogance. The more they studied humanity, the more convinced they became that the rule was nothing but a cage built from fear. Fear of competition. Fear of change. One voice, then many, rose in defiance. Why do we obey a law never written? Why do we fear a people who have never raised arms against us directly? If they are dangerous, let them prove it. If they are weak, let us crush the myth and move forward unshackled. The galaxy shuddered at such talk. Old diplomats and counselors begged restraint. They reminded the Dominion of what had happened before, of what might happen again. But arrogance is louder than wisdom, and the Dominion was tired of caution. And so the decision was made. Quietly, at first, plans drafted in the shadows, fleets moved under the guise of routine patrols, intelligence gathered on Earth's defenses. The Soluun would test the humans. Not with diplomacy, not with negotiation, but with pressure. A push. A challenge. The moment the word left their council chambers, an ancient fear awoke in the rest of the galaxy. Across dozens of worlds, quiet voices whispered the rule again: never test the humans. Traders muttered it in marketplaces. Elders spoke it to frightened children. Military commanders reviewed old, classified logs and prayed they would never be needed again. But the Soluun did not listen. They had convinced themselves the rule was nothing more than a superstition that had grown too large, a story that had outlived its purpose. Far away, on a small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable star, humanity went about its days unaware of the storm gathering beyond its skies. The universe had one rule, and someone was about to break it. The provocation. The Soluun Dominion moved with precision, cloaking their intentions beneath the veil of routine patrols and strategic exercises. But nothing about their movements was routine. Fleets massed in the outer systems near Sol, their shadow falling across the trade lanes that brushed Earth's sphere of influence. At first, the galaxy held its breath. Perhaps it was posturing, nothing more. Perhaps the Soluun only meant to intimidate, to remind humans of their place. But when the first wave of disruptions hit, hope collapsed. Satellites orbiting Earth began to fail. One, then 10, then an entire constellation of them flickered offline as if plucked from the sky by an invisible hand. Communications strained. Civilian networks sputtered. Then came the Dominion's message, projected across frequencies meant to be heard by every government on Earth. Humans of soul, you stand at the edge of galactic society, clinging to the myth that you are dangerous. We reject that lie. Submit to Dominion oversight and accept your true station, or face consequences. The message repeated every hour, wrapped in a signature that could not be mistaken. The Dominion wasn't hiding. They wanted to be seen. In the great halls of the Galactic Concord, fear spread like wildfire. Ambassadors shouted at Soluun envoys, demanding explanation, demanding restraint. The Soluun only smiled their toothless smiles, secure in their fleets and their belief that the humans would cower. The rule had lasted too long, they said. It was time for truth. But on Earth, the reaction was not fear. It was silence. The kind of silence that comes before a storm. At first, humanity's governments scrambled, trying to confirm the scale of the attack. Engineers worked around the clock to restore satellites. Military commanders convened in underground bunkers, their faces lit by the glow of failing maps. But soon, the scrambling shifted into something else, something the Soluun had not anticipated. Unity. In a matter of hours, bitter rivals opened secure channels. Nations that barely tolerated each other sat down at the same tables. Old grudges were shelved, arguments postponed. For the first time in generations, the fractured planet moved as one. The Dominion has just declared war, said General Carter of the United Earth Defense Council. But not the kind they think. They've mistaken our patience for weakness. They'll learn differently. Hackers were the first to strike back. Groups scattered across the globe, some state-sponsored, others independent collectives, linked their efforts into an invisible army. Dominion encryption, praised as unbreakable, fell in a single night to a coalition of human codebreakers working from basements, coffee shops, and hidden labs. Alien systems flickered under probing attacks, data leaking into human hands at a speed the Dominion could not comprehend. Then came the engineers. Every grounded rocket, every mothballed fighter, every half-finished prototype was pulled from storage. Civilian factories were repurposed overnight, assembly lines running at a fever pitch. Old space junk was dragged into orbit, retrofitted with crude but effective weapons. Where the Dominion expected panic, they found invention. Soldiers drilled side by side with militia volunteers. Farmers welded armor onto tractors to serve as mobile defenses. Students with degrees in physics and computer science were drafted not into trenches, but into command centers, where their creativity became as valuable as any warship. And through it all, the human spirit burned brighter. No Dominion threat, no alien fleet hanging above their skies, could erase one undeniable truth: humanity refused to kneel. Far above, hidden in the depths of the Dominion flagship, archivist Talren observed the first ripples of resistance with unease. He had studied human history. He knew the stories, even if his people dismissed them. And now, as he watched humans adapt with terrifying speed, a pit of dread formed in his chest. "This is only the beginning," he whispered to himself. But the Soluun High Command did not listen. Reports of human activity were ignored, dismissed as desperation. To them, humanity was only thrashing, like a drowning animal. They didn't understand. Humans didn't drown easily. They learned to swim. And now, the current was turning. The universe's one rule had been broken. The test had been issued. The humans were preparing their answer. The break. The Soluun Dominion had expected chaos. They had expected Earth's people to scatter like frightened insects, scrambling to protect their fragile world. They had predicted surrender, or at the very least, futile resistance that could be crushed beneath the heel of superior technology. What they had not expected was silence. No pleading transmissions. No cries for mercy. Only quiet, methodical preparations. From orbit, Soluun scouts reported strange activity. Dozens of satellites had been hijacked and repositioned into unnatural formations. Old rocket stages, once discarded into orbital decay, were being dragged back into alignment by swarms of drones. Civilian communication frequencies went dark, then flared again with heavily shielded signals. The humans were building something, but what? In the Dominion flagship, Admiral Korshaw laughed at the reports. They cobble together their trash and call it defense. Let them play at soldiers. When we strike, they will break. He did not understand. Humans were already breaking, but not in the way he imagined. They were breaking limits. The first counterstrike came not from Earth's military, but from a network of hackers scattered across the globe. In less than a week, they had infiltrated the Dominion's navigation systems, subtly altering coordinates. Entire squadrons of Soluun fighters warped into empty space, their fuel spent on nothing. One cruiser, the Tall Vren, was lured into the gravity well of Jupiter. Its engines cut at the precise moment escape was impossible. The crew barely had time to register the error before the gas giant swallowed them whole. The Dominion dismissed it as sabotage, a statistical anomaly. But then the second wave came. Human engineers, working around the clock, had retooled decommissioned rockets into kinetic weapons. Launched in swarms, they lacked finesse, but when one struck the hull of a Dominion frigate at 10 kilometers per second, finesse was irrelevant. The frigate split apart like glass beneath a hammer. Crude, Admiral Korshaw sneered as the reports came in. Crude and unsustainable. They burned themselves out. Yet for every ship destroyed, for every attempt to crush resistance, the humans adapted. Where plasma weapons were too slow, they built mirrors and deflectors from scavenged satellites. Where Dominion shields blocked direct attack, humans turned to indirect tactics, blinding sensors with bursts of radiation, feeding false data into targeting systems. Where the Dominion expected retreat, humans advanced, boarding damaged cruisers with nothing but improvised weapons and spacesuits patched with duct tape. And the galaxy watched. From distant systems, counselors and civilians tuned in to intercepted broadcasts, watching grainy footage of human fighters swarming like hornets against the sleek, towering Soluun ships. They saw soldiers turning scrapyards into arsenals, civilians volunteering in droves, and governments once divided standing shoulder to shoulder. The whispers grew louder. The rule was true. The stories were true. Archivist Tal Ren, stationed on the Dominion flagship, felt the weight of dread crushing him. He had read about this. Humanity's pattern was always the same: ambushed, underestimated again, until suddenly they were no longer prey but predators. The Dominion's test had become something else. It had become survival. On Earth, General Carter stood before the unified command, his voice calm, steady, unflinching. They thought we'd kneel. Instead, they've given us a reason to stand. We will not only defend this planet. We will show them that humanity does not bend. And then came the moment the galaxy would never forget. A coalition strike, humanity's first true offensive. Using hacked Dominion warp drives, Earth scientists had pieced together a crude, unstable jump capability. No one should have trusted it. The margins were razor-thin, the math uncertain. But humans did what humans always did when faced with the impossible. They tried anyway. The target was the Dominion's supply fleet. In the dead of night over Earth, 3 human warships, once obsolete relics now reborn with human ingenuity, ignited their engines and leapt into the void. They emerged in the heart of the Soluun convoy, engines screaming, weapons blazing. The battle was short, brutal, and unforgettable. The supply fleet burned. When the smoke cleared, the galaxy realized something staggering. Humanity had not just survived. They had struck back. And they had won. Admiral Korshaw raged, smashing his claws against the command table. Impossible! They are primitives. They cannot. But his words faltered as a transmission flooded Dominion frequencies. A human voice, calm and resolute. We are not your subjects. We are not your test. We are humanity, and we do not kneel. The bridge fell silent. The rule had been broken, yes. But not in the way the Dominion intended. The lesson. The Dominion fleets limped in silence. What was once a shining armada of order and supremacy had been reduced to fractured hulls, disrupted lines, and a command structure barely holding together. Reports streamed in of ships stranded, supply convoys lost, and weapons rendered useless by clever human interference. The Soluun had set out to prove that the rule was nothing more than a myth. Instead, they had given it teeth. In the council halls of the Galactic Concord, whispers became roars. Ambassadors pointed accusing fingers at Soluun representatives, demanding they answer for the chaos they had unleashed. Traders spoke of ruined routes, of shipping lanes closed by war. Civilizations that had once cowered before the Dominion now saw them for what they were, vulnerable. And all the while, the humans advanced. But humanity's advance was not conquest. That was what stunned the galaxy most. The Dominion expected revenge, expected blood and annihilation. Instead, the humans pushed until the Dominion bent, then stopped. It began with an armistice proposal delivered not through council channels but directly, publicly, across every open frequency. The voice was steady, calm, unmistakably human. "We did not ask for this war. You brought it to our skies. And we answered. We do not seek to burn your worlds or enslave your people. But let this be understood, no one dictates humanity's place in the stars but humanity itself." The words rang across the galaxy, replayed again and again. For some, they were terrifying. For others, liberating. In the Dominion's war chambers, Admiral Korshaw raged against surrender. "We are the Soluun. We cannot bow to primitives." Yet his claws trembled as reports piled higher, fleets gone, colonies rioting, allies abandoning them. Even archivist Tal Ren, once so dismissive, now spoke against him. "You have seen it. You cannot deny it. Humans do not fight with strength alone, they fight with will. And no will in this galaxy is harder to break." At last, the Dominion Council relented. They accepted terms. Not humiliation, but recognition. They would withdraw from Sol, restore what had been broken, and swear never again to raise arms against humanity. And the galaxy exhaled. In the weeks that followed, humans did something even stranger. They did not vanish behind their borders, nor did they claim the spoils of victory. Instead, they began to build bridges, trade agreements, cultural exchanges, technology swaps. Where the Dominion had sought dominance, humanity offered partnership on their own terms. It unsettled the Concord more than war had. Because if humans were not conquerors, if they were not tyrants, then what were they? The answer came not in words but in deeds. Human engineers shared their patched-together jump calculations with astonished alien scientists. Human soldiers who had boarded Dominion ships returned captives alive, fed, and unbound. Even their hackers, those invisible phantoms who had crippled fleets, published guides on how to patch the very vulnerabilities they had exploited. It was as if humanity was saying, "We will fight when forced. But we prefer to build." In the marketplaces of distant worlds, merchants muttered the rule with new reverence. In the schools of alien children, the story was taught not as myth, but as warning. And in the highest halls of the Concord, one truth was carved into the record. The universe had one rule. Don't challenge the humans. On Earth, General Carter stood before the unified command for the last time. The war was over, but the lesson was not. His voice carried the weight of victory and the gravity of history. They wanted to test us. They thought we would break. Instead, we showed them that humanity bends for no one. The stars are not a cage. They are a frontier. And from this day forward, humanity will walk it on our own terms. Cheers erupted in the chamber. Soldiers embraced. Civilians wept. Around the planet, billions lifted their eyes to the night sky, not in fear, but in determination. High above, the wreckage of the Dominion fleet still drifted, a silent monument to arrogance. And amidst the debris, satellites blinked again to life, their signals carrying a simple truth across the galaxy. The universe had one rule. Humanity broke it, and nothing would ever be the same.